I think the biggest misconception, and I'm talking about from inception, is that there were more deadbeat fathers than there were good fathers. I think from the genesis, even when many of us grew as boys, it was embedded in our minds, as I said, from TV shows, from movies, from things we were taught, from lessons we learned, some of us because we grew up in single-parent homes, that there were more deadbeat fathers than there were good fathers. My mom and dad separated when I was a young boy, and I understood the significance and value of having a father there, needing a father there, needing counsel, needing to feel safe. Because from the time you reach into that adolescent age as a young teen, your mother is there, but your mother doesn't give you that protected feeling. There are many boys that are sexually assaulted that become increasingly violent after, because they haven't had it dealt with. They didn't admit it to anybody. Mommy, daddy didn't find it. And these things spew aggression. Some of them might have become rapists after that as well. Sexually assaulted not only by men, as I say, but by women also.
Audacious Rebel. Today, on the path of the Audacious Rebel, we're joined by a man who has turned resistance into revolution, Mr. Rhondall Feeles. He's not just an advocate, he's a catalyst for change. The owner of Millennium Auto Dealership, vice president of the Trinidad and Tobago Automotive Dealers Association, and the unapologetic founder and president of the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, an organization that has shattered silence and forced the nation to confront uncomfortable truths about fatherhood, family, and justice. For over a decade, Rhondall has gone where most fear to tread, confronting systemic bias, exposing legislative gaps, and standing in defense of the voiceless. His unwavering dedication to truth, transformation, earned him the Humminbird Medal Silver, one of the highest honors in Trinidad and Tobago, for his work in community development and social justice. Appointed in 2014 to the Prime Minister's Child Protection Task Force, he helped drive the rollout of the Children's Authority and Child Protection Unit before launching a historic EU-funded initiative, Gender Equality and Fatherhood, which forced the national conversation on parenting to evolve. He's challenged the courts, advised Parliament, testified before joint select committees, and took the fight all the way to the US Congress on the issue of international child abduction. He's been in war rooms of law and policy while earning his law degree from the University of London, and in the trenches with struggling fathers and fractured families. Rhondall Feeles is not just reshaping the system, he's redefining what it means to be a father, an advocate, and a rebel with purpose. Welcome to the show, Mr. Rhondall Feeles.
Thank you for having me, my brother. I appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
You know, Rhondall, first and foremost, let me extend heartfelt congratulations to you on receiving one of the nation's highest honors, the Humminbird Medal Silver. A powerful acknowledgement of your unwavering commitment to community development and social justice in Trinidad and Tobago. I know for decades you've stood at the front line of a battle many refuse to see, championing the cause of men, particularly fathers, in a society that has often dismissed their struggles. You've been labeled, misunderstood, and even vilified, sometimes by the very systems and policymakers who now recognize your work at a national level. After weathering years of resistance, adversity, and pushback, what did it really feel like in the stillness of that moment to be told you were being awarded one of the country's highest national honors by the same establishment you spent years holding accountable? How did that feel?
I was surprised. I was truly shocked. Honored in the same breath I mean, to be, as I said, recognized. And not recognized meaning me, Rhondall, feels recognized, but being down in the trenches isn't easy at all. And for that to be recognized, I think that's what meant most to me. That actually, as you said, the same system that I have been hammering and hammering, they actually say, hey, we see where you're coming from. And I mean, that sense of acknowledgement is something to me that was worth money, possibly even more than the medal itself. To have your state say that, hey, the effort you've put out, the times you've been misunderstood, the times you've been misrepresented, the times you've been mislabeled, we get where you're coming from and we understand it, and we actually appreciate your contribution to our nation of Trinidad and Tobago.
You know, Rhondall, as I mentioned, I've been observing your journey for years, for more than one reason. But if it's one thing that has always stood out to me, is the fire. That unwavering drive. You possess a relentless passion that refuses to be extinguished, no matter the resistance or the cost. What do you believe is the true source of that drive?
Boy, I think I'd always tell people, I saw that drive in my mother, boy. My mother was that type of person. She was a communitarian, humanitarian. She was a mother. She was a entrance teacher. And I saw her never give up, no matter what it was. I saw her physically abused, but I saw her never give up. I saw her forgive. I saw her love unconditionally. And I would say at times when I feel like wavering, I would often reflect on her. So I have to say that being able to grow as a child and being as lucky as I was to have a mother of such fortitude, valor, and integrity, I was able to have something to look up to. And I think that's what keeps me going. That's what kept me going. She kept us grounded. She gave us good advice, unbiased advice. Despite whatever relationship she had with our father, she never kept us out of his life. And I think that spoke volumes to us, volumes to me. I am pretty sure I could talk on behalf of my brother as well.
Right. You know, was there a personal experience that inspired the creation of the Single Fathers Association?
Yeah, of course, my personal journey. And my personal journey doesn't only start when a court said that they don't see the significance of my son spending substantial amount of time with me. That started from me as a child. So, as I said, my mom and my dad alluded to rather, my mom and dad separated when I was a young boy. And I understood the significance and value of having a father there, needing a father there, needing counsel, needing to feel safe. Because from the time you reach into that adolescent age as a young teen, your mother is there, but your mother doesn't give you that protected feeling. And your mother is unable to give you that manly advice and that male mentorship. You sometimes see yourself more as her protector as you have gotten taller than her. Your voice has gotten deeper than hers. And I think the lack thereof is what made me purpose from childhood to always be involved in my son's lives or my children's life, whether I would have a boy, a girl, or whatever. And when I had the opportunity to do so, that was something that was sacred to me. It was fatherhood to me was just not about having a child and minding him or maintaining him. It was something sacred to me. It was something that resonated in my heart, in my soul, in my being. And I often said because of that, I was very able to then say, hey, I will be relentless. I won't give up. I have to be involved. He's not going to have my experience of saying my father isn't there. He will have some form of representation so that when I fought to be in his life, it wasn't just for me. It was for him also. And as you said, I'm a businessman as well. And I am a self-made businessman. So I understood what it took to get there. And I understood the value of generational successive planning and having my heir there with me to understand the steps and the processes and the grit and what it involved. So as for his development as well. So I know it was only fair to him and fair to myself for us to have a bond during those formative years that most people say, he will get big, he will become a man just now. I wasn't prepared to not be involved in that part of his life at all. And I was willing to go to the distance.
Understood. You know, Rhondall, the focus of this season is crime, its causes, its layers, and ultimately the way forward. When we examine the data, it's undeniable. Men are overwhelmingly at the center of the crisis. In 2023, nearly 90% of all crimes in the United States were committed by men. And that's just the direct involvement. But when we look deeper at fathers absent from the home, broken family structures, and the emotional voids left behind, we see another layer, an indirect contribution to the conditions that breed crime. Given your years of advocacy, particularly for men and fathers, how do you interpret this connection between the male crisis and the crime crisis? And what, in your view, is the root cause behind the pattern that continues to echo across nations and generations?
I would say the abandonment of men, the social issues that men have suffered for years. There's something that I often say. There's one thing that is worse than being extinct. It is existing and nobody knows that you're there. So it's like you're visible, but you're invisible to society. So we can look at the after effect of criminal behavior, but have we taken time to look at the issues when it comes to like homelessness? Women are 94%, based on the Ministry of Developments, the victims of homelessness. Suicide, women are 84% the victims of suicide. When it comes to a man's likelihood to have custody or to be awarded custody in court, which is only 32%. Have we looked at the murder rate of men themselves, which is 90.7% also. So when you see this high level of abandonment of a member of society, and I just told you homelessness is 94%, but you see that there isn't one male shelter. I just told you that there's the suicide rate is 84%, but there's no real social strategy to eradicate that epidemic that men suffer from that is called suicide. Then that says something. Even when we are having events of men, even when we're talking about, we speak about, and I don't even want to say the word parade. Rightfully so, we advertise and sensitize the nation of the risks of violence against women. I gave you a statistic for murder, the murder rate of men, which is 90.7%. We are not sensitized on the issues that men face, and that is why it continues to climb. When I give the suicide rate of men are not even aware that the suicide rate of men is that high. They believe, some of them, that women have a higher rate of suicide than them. If you ask a man about homelessness, or you ask a young boy if he's at risk of homelessness, he has no clue, when he is 94% more likely to grow into a man and face homelessness opposed to a young girl his age. We have not sensitized men on their vulnerabilities. And because we have not sensitized them on their vulnerabilities, they grow up not knowing that they have them, and then have to find a way to cope with them at the last given second. Untrained, unprepared, untaken care of. So at the end of the entire day, I would say the abandonment of men is what has led us to this position. I have seen many young men who have been cast or labeled as violent, ignorant. They will never amount to anything. With the right mentorship, the right attention, and the right care have been reformed into the brightest diamonds in Trinidad and Tobago.
And it's something you said that, as I said, I was in corrections for 5 years and I was in law enforcement for 25. And for a percentage of my time in corrections, I work at the Youth Training Center in Trinidad. And we had a lot of young people, they failed in school and stuff. But when they left the institution, they left with 7 and 8 ones fully qualified. So it's not like they had any mental inhibitions.
Correct.
It's just like society was not really prepared to deal with them.
Correct. And think about it, and I'm glad you're from that walk of life. Look at my lot as well. It's because you guys in the correctional facilities, right? Particularly the ones get on youth per se. You create an environment for learning. You create an environment of trust. You create an environment of respect for authority. You create an environment for moral ethic to flourish. So if you put anything in that environment, it will prosper, it will grow, because you put it in the place to grow. But if you put a young man in a place where none of these things exist, and the only thing he has to look at is the gangman and the block, then how can you expect him to? And I often say, no child is born a criminal. No child is born a rapist. It is the environment that feeds the mind of that child. It is the external environment on the outside of the home, particularly if the internal home environment is not an environment that could shield him from the external forces. And that is particularly a big part of the problem.
For sure, definitely. I did a piece recently when I reflected on the work of people like Professor Adrian Rain and stuff, where it shows when you're in a toxic environment, how it affects the development of your brain itself. So there's a disadvantage in terms of the neocortex not being developed, the hindbrain being more developed. So you're a more impulsive child rather than one that would think before making decisions, because your executive functioning is not as it should be.
Correct.
But given that reality and the societal costs of that absence, how do we begin the work of restoration? What practical steps do we need to take, not just as individuals, but as a nation, to bring men back into alignment with their role as protectors and providers and nurturers and what? How can we fix that?
It must start, I believe, at first with acknowledgement. You must acknowledge that we've dropped the ball. I have come to realize that is the greatest way to get males' attention. If you can acknowledge, whatever space it is, whether it's from a governmental state space, whether it's from a relationship space between a man and his wife, acknowledgement does something to the male. You get his attention. He's now listening to you. And if as a state we can acknowledge, hey, we've dropped the ball and we want to correct this. We want to fix this. We want to start from the elementary school. We want to start from the primary school level, where we start introducing a different narrative when it comes to morale, when it comes to ethic, when it comes to respect for man, respect for woman, these kind of things. And if we start from there, that is where the reformative work has to be done. You understand? That's we see other advocacy groups doing that, targeting the young minds because they realize where it needs to be embedded. But I am saying, if you see we take that strategy and we start putting our males in our society in a very particular place of concern, I am pretty sure we are going to see our next generation of men and women do exceedingly better. Because it's not just about men doing better. It's not just about women doing better. It's about men and women being able to coexist at the best and highest potential. And that is it. Helping each other. We can't have better relationships. We can't have better marriages. We can't ever have better work relationships if men and women don't understand how to coexist, respect each other, appreciate each other, strengthen each other, understand each other's highs and lows. And until we get to that position, as I said, the acknowledgement part is a big part to me as well. We need to start. Look, we have. I must commend the smaller nations in the Caribbean. I must commend nations like Grenada that held the first International Men's Day regional celebration, where they invited the entire Caribbean, led and chaired by the Minister of Social Development. I must commend, today I came out of a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts, he being a man, and the Gender Minister for Nevis, she being a woman, who are heavily invested in making the lives of their men and boys and their families better. They are going to host that very IMD seminar this year, and it's on November 19th. That period, you're going to hear about it for sure. But to see the level of investment from the Deputy Prime Minister is so motivating, even in that meeting. I can only imagine when he goes in front of a television screen and speaks in that manner to his men of his society, how emboldened and empowered, how much they'll feel cared for. Because that is many times what men will tell you, boy, man is dog, nobody don't care about we. You will always hear a man say, nobody don't care about we. So if that is the general consensus of maleness, then we must do the opposite. We must do things for men to know without doubt that we care about you.
You know, you're touching on so much things there, because this is also inherent in societal culture. You know, when you look at the media, when you look at the ideologies perpetuated on the television screens, you know, but this is, we'll get there. You understand? You know, Rhondall,
correct.
James Brown once declared, this is a man's world. Yet, when you take a hard look at the legal system, especially in matters like divorce and custody, it often feels like that world turns against men the moment they step into a courtroom. You know, recently, President Trump recently stated divorce has become a very lucrative business for women in the United States, and I'm going to put an end to it. That comment struck a nerve globally, and it echoes what many men have been feeling for years, that the legal system has been weaponized, turning deeply personal matters into financial warfare. As someone who has spent years on the front lines advocating for fathers and navigating the fault lines for family law, do you believe the odds are structurally stacked against men? And if so,
of course,
what systemic reforms are urgently needed to bring fairness, balance, and humanity back into these sensitive spaces?
Correct. I mean, that's the topic of financial provision. And historically, and we, as they say, as James Brown said, and people love to say, it is, or at least in that time, possibly they would have said, it is a man's world. I often wonder which man they were talking about. I believe it's Pacific man, but I can't say it was generally all men included in that bracket at all, right? to begin with. But there was, I would say, at that point in time, a powerful man. And I wouldn't say that his counterpart or his wife wasn't more powerful than others in the society at that point in time as well. And I understand that financial provisions between them were set in place so that she could be taken care of, the powerful man and the powerful woman. I wouldn't go into too much of that because it will go too far down the ladder. But I say all that to say this. Financial provisions, particularly in this modern day era, where women have rightfully fought for the opportunity to be employed, fought for the opportunity for equal pay, fought for the opportunity to be prime ministers, presidents, to drive, a number of things that even men have supported women with. One of the suggestions that we've made, we have particularly made that particularly within our region, prenuptial agreements be looked at. And people may think this is to protect only men, but this also protects women as well, particularly women that may have sons, because a woman could work her entire life, leave her entire asset to her son, and then her son lose it all based on that financial provision. So I often tell women that this is just as important for them as it is for men. It's all a matter of fairness. It's all a matter of equity, more so. So particularly in a climate where we have seen, now I understand the value of the housewife or the homemaker, where she, in other words, takes entire care of the home, alleviates a man from that cost. And this goes vice versa in this society, because now you're seeing a lot of women, particularly nurses and doctors, who travel into other places or other countries and carrying their husbands. And because it's a better opportunity for the entire family unit, roles reverse. So now you're seeing men having the opportunity to be able, now to be able to, even at some point in time, have the upper hand when it comes to financial provision. It's still in the minority, but it's still a possibility and happening now. So one of the suggestions that we definitely have made or put forward is prenuptial agreements for the protection of men and women and the assets they might have accrued prior to their marriages or would have inherited from their fathers, inherited from their mothers, so that their provisions are protected if, God forbid, in the event of a divorce and the event of a breakup or dissolution of a marriage in some sorts.
No, but besides the financial provision, Rhondall, don't you think there's an imbalance as well as it pertains to custody? It's as if sometimes, you would know better than me. It's as if sometimes it is just the default setting that the mother gets custody of the child, in spite of what the circumstance may be. I don't know if it has changed since,
Well, the statistics have shown us during that study, the EU, we actually were the first people to do a study on the family court. And what it showed when it comes to an issue of care and control, because care and control is really where the child resides, you can have joint custody. Once you're married, you're entitled to joint custody. Custody is really sharing in the decisions of the child's life. What school, what religion, and these things. So most married couples have access to this. However, you could have joint custody and horrible care and horrible access. One person has care and control, the other person has access. So the statistic for care and control, when we looked at it, is when men and women were on equal footing, neither at risk to the child, both financially capable to maintain the child. Men were awarded custody, care, and control 32% of the times. Women were awarded 62% of the times, and 2% of the times there was shared care and control. Whereas I would think when you are seeing mothers and fathers, particularly if you're in a society where you're encouraging men to step up, be involved, and play a role in their child's life, I would have expected that 2% to be 90%. Because in an instance where you can exercise shared care and control, it's best for all parties involved, parents and child. It means that the child is shared equally. The child doesn't feel like he's visiting one parent. He feels that he resides at both places. Both parents have opportunity to pursue other social activities, developments in their own personal lives. And also there's no need for a maintenance order to cause any further altercation. However, for some reason, our family courts have not exercised that particular right. As I said, there's only one order that has been made, and that is what has classified for the 2% of the times that it's been done. And seeing that one time that order has been made, we didn't even have to wait for legislation to be passed, because judges, as they always like to do, they use common law. So another judge could actually follow through with what that judge has done. But we have not seen that. We're still seeing primarily where now there's a greater consciousness of fathering and fatherhood, where you're still seeing sole care and custody being granted to persons who have the capability, who have the resource, and who has the time to share care and control.
Right. So this imbalance that appears to be tilt against men, do you think it extends beyond the courtroom, though? Do you believe there's a deeper cultural bias at play, one that shows up in how we portray men in the media, how we educate our boys, and how society often assumes guilt or irresponsibility the moment a man is accused or criticized in a family setting? Is the system just legally imbalanced, or are we dealing with a much wider societal conditioning that has vilified masculinity itself?
And I totally agree with that. I think the court is impacted by that social influence. I think that's where the court got, or I would say adopted that inherent feeling or perception of maleness is not something that sometimes you could that can be trusted. Maleness at some point in time will shake, will leave, will break, will abandon. Maleness is not secure enough for us to determine that this person should have custody. So I agree with you. As I said, we have seen it. We have seen the portrayal of it. And the thing is, we see it from spaces that we need to trust. You see it in ads on television. You alluded to this earlier. So we look at a child protection unit ad, and you will always, most times, only see the father over the mother and the child cowering in the protection of the mother, where in many cases, it's vice versa. Where in many cases, there are instances where the woman could be the aggressor. There are even cases when the children are the aggressor as well. But there's only one representation that we're fed. One thing we see. And you're talking about your children see it also. Because the whole family could be looking at the news. An ad comes across television. And that's what they see. They see daddy generally as this person that can be aggressive and dangerous. And they see mommy as that person who will always protect them. And I think it's dangerous because in instances where children are exposed to mothers that are abusive, and the Children Authority statistics did in 2019 produce statistics that show that mothers were more abusive than fathers when they did the research, that could mislead children sometimes into thinking that they are more at risk with daddy, where that child could actually be more at risk at mommy. So I think you're right, and I think that's something social, that's something that we've inherited, something that we see in television, we see in shows, we see directors have put it in movies, and it's something that we have unfortunately not been able to erase as yet or undo. And the only way to undo that is to now resensitize, is now to reproduce, redirect, change the narrative. And for some reason, we may see a few of it now, but we're not seeing it in the manner in which we need to see it, and we're not seeing it from the places we need to see it. Places like the Office of the Prime Minister, the Gender Division Unit, places, as I said, from the TTPS, sending these messages out so that young boys and even grown men can feel it, so we could normalize men seeing their vulnerabilities. There are men that are raped, sexually assaulted, that keep it quiet because we have not put that out there, that it's okay to go and give a report if you've been sexually assaulted as a young boy, even if it is a woman that has done it. We have not erased some of these cultural perceptions.
So, when you look at that, and that imbalance, that bias, and cultural marginalization, do you think that these factors have played a role in driving the crime rates we see today, especially among young men?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. As I said before, if we have them unprepared or we have them ignorant of places they could get help, or places that could actually assist them, when these things happen to them, they keep it to themselves. There are many boys that are sexually assaulted that become increasingly violent after, because they haven't had it dealt with. They didn't admit it to anybody. Mommy, daddy didn't find it. And these things pure aggression. Some of them might have become rapists after that as well. Sexually assaulted not only by men, as I say, but by women also. You understand? Some of them may be afraid because culturally, if you go and complain that an older woman has done something to you that made you feel uncomfortable, people could say it's a soft man or say that you're gay or some kind of thing like that. We have not cultured our boys in a manner, in a way to make them feel that we are here to protect you. Even on our family lifestyle, we will send our 12-year-old boy or 13-year-old son to places that we won't send our 16-year-old daughter, sorry. So culturally, we've adapted that. We'll tell your 11-year-old son, sleep with this grown woman here. Go and share a bedroom with her, where you will never put your 11-year-old daughter in the same room with an adult man. Go and sleep with auntie, or go and sleep with my friend, lie down on the bed with her at 10 and 11, and expose them to sexual assault or chances of sexual assault that we would not do for young girls. So I am not going to say that is the only reason for crime, but as I said, these are some of the reasons as well. These are some of the things that can have that impact on some of these children, and seeing them respond and react in the manner that they are reacting now. It may not happen right away, but it may have impacted them that caused them to act in a particular way later on in their life.
From a community level, what practical ground-up efforts do you believe are most critical right now? Mentorship, education, rights of passage, safe. What do our communities need to do right now to reclaim our boys before the streets do so?
Yeah, I think our community, we're talking about boys today, but I often say as all members of the community, we need communal spaces that you could get meaningful outreach and have meaningful access to it. Persons that are trained and experienced, that could actually bring resolve, that could actually give guidance, could actually bring conflict resolution. We need the community spaces, and we need to develop a system that allows for that. We need to develop a system that pays for that. So that, because that's another problem, you understand? So I think part of our, as you made, you're hitting the nails on the head as yourself, you alluded that it should be in the community. And that is the part I think most times when you're dealing with state providing things, it's sometimes not in the community, it's in a general area. So you have to get out of your community to get to it. And I think that is what we definitely more communal centered assistance and resource to assist all members of the family. Situations where sometimes some of these boys join gangs because they're uncomfortable home, Home is not a comfortable space. They don't have anywhere to go to speak, to find that male mentorship. Or there's nowhere advertised that they could go to. Or there may be spaces that they're just not comfortable going. So what do we do? Yes, people will argue and say, all right, Mr. Feeles, you have the churches, you have cadets, you have scouts, you have many of these groups that they could join. But that's the thing. We need that community space that not only waits for people to come to them, but goes to people who they think are concerned and either assist them themselves or redirect them or point them in directions of spaces and groups that could assist them.
No, I'm getting you, and in some way I'm still hearing things being trickled down from a policy position, from ideologies perpetuated by the state. But what I am saying, community for community. What can we do? What can the average person in a community do that is trying to make a difference? What can we do in our community outside of the state to help and to break what is happening right now?
How you see it? I understand the value of what they call agape love. I understand. You see, I am dealing with the community that we have now. And quite honestly, I think because we've gone so far, what do I call it, left, we've become apathetic, we've become selfish, we've become torn away, we've become isolated. That is why you hear me pound so much that is a demand from the head come down to kind of revitalize the ground, right? So, yes, I believe strongly that there may be persons, activists in community, NGOs in community, CBOs in community that must stand. And I always say that the community has the answers for a problem and get things going. And we've started many community-based organizations in areas of enterprise like Dastrace, Youth Empowerment Committee, Crunches Youth Empowerment Committee, Bridge and Castle Youth Empowerment Committee. And these youth are so motivated and we get them doing things, but then they reach a point where they are impacted by some of the absence of those policies, the absence of the funding, the absence of the assistance. So they get it going, they get it moving, they get it running, and then sometimes they just need that resource to get what they need done in the community. So it must be a multi-sectoral approach where the CBO is empowered, where it is supported, where it is encouraged, where the state gives that encouragement and support to the CBOs and get them going. And when I say support, I do only like to say monetary support, because sometimes it turns into a scrabble for CBOs for who could get what money. There must be involvement. There must be involvement with from the ministry line. Let's say community development. You must be involvement. You must have your employees involved in the projects taking place on the ground, having an understanding of what's taking place on the ground, having the understanding of the challenges. Because sometimes the CBO break up, and when the CBO break up, the community break up again, Or the CBO start a war, and when the CBO start a war, the community start a war again. So it is something that demands continuous multi-sectoral approaching.
Right. Rhondall, what are some of the most damaging misconceptions you've encountered about single fathers, and how have you had to confront or dismantle those false narratives through your work and live experience?
I think the biggest misconception, and I'm talking about from inception, is that there were more deadbeat fathers than there were good fathers. I think from the genesis, even when many of us grew as boys, it was embedded in our minds, as I said, from TV shows, from movies, from things we were taught, from lessons we learned, some of us because we grew up in single-parent homes, that there were more deadbeat fathers than there were good fathers. And I don't think so at all. I think fathers have fathered silently. Good fathers don't really brag about it, You hear their children brag about them, about what he did and how he did it and how religiously he did it and how hard he worked to get them to do and to be what they became. Men have never, particularly those fathers who fathered, have most times fathered so silently that their children didn't even know the obstacles that they faced while fathering. So in order to break that, we had as a group to kind of step out of that silent fathering norm and start making fatherhood public, a little louder, talking about the rights of fathers, be a little more vocal on it, starting to highlight the number of men that have been doing the right thing versus the number of men that have fallen by the side. Started highlighting the fact that not every man that doesn't take up his role as father is because he is negligent. Sometimes he is uncertain if he is a father, and rightfully so, because the way to confirm paternity is most times presumptuous, which is where you sign a birth paper or you just marry a woman. There are many persons who, after separation, may have shirked their responsibility because they were uncertain. So by highlighting these things and showing the positive and the number of men that have been fathers, and also another side of the coin to even some of those. They are the negligent, I will never say no, to even some of those who were taking a standoff approach because of uncertainty. I think by doing that, we've been able to shed a little more light, erase a lot of misconception. Hence the reason, as I said, now we have more consciousness coming from the state when it comes to judicial spaces, when it comes to social service spaces, when it comes to social development and these ministries. We have more consciousness now than existed before.
Rhondall, from your work on the ground in Trinidad and Tobago and your global observations, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges single fathers face today? Challenges that seem to transcend borders and point to a deeper shared struggle among men worldwide.
I would say to be seen as fathers. And you may say that is a big general statement because so many other challenges single parenting comes with. But the fact, as I said, to be seen as a father, and the challenge, it's core is what is really at the epicenter of all the other issues they have. It's why they have horrible parental or paternity leave, because you're a less valuable parent. It's why when you went to social services some years ago, if you were a single father, you could not receive public assistance because you are the breadwinner, so you're not supposed to get it. It is why, as a single father, you're not seen as valuable enough to have substantial time with your child because you're not a father, you babysit. You understand? You often would hear that said to you. You're walking with your child and say, hey, babysitting today, boy. Where you will never hear someone say that to a mother. So these are the challenges. Not being seen as a valuable parent is what has led to all the other things I mentioned. Horrible paternity leave, 2 to 3 days, as I just mentioned. Even though the very said father pays equal national insurance contributions, he has horrible paternity leave. As I made mention, when it comes to custody and access, you're given that every other weekend because it's not necessary. The child doesn't really need you. So most of these things are horrible, as I said, social service assistance, because you're the man, and at the end of the day, if the mother isn't there, you need to show the mother isn't there to show that you really need assistance. And that, or you're injured, rather, for you to really get some meaningful assistance. So the mother not being there is not enough, as a matter of fact. It was not enough until 2018. We had fathers who were on the borderline of cutting their hands off, you know. I had a particular father from Diego Martin, 8 children, the mother died. They worked and maintained their 8 children, but the mother died from cancer. And he couldn't get assistance or help, and he just wanted the contribution of the mother's side. He would have kept the contribution making that he's making. He didn't want contribution for all 8. But because he was a father and because he was uninjured, what was not even enshrined in law, the law said that he had the right to receive assistance. But a policy was formed in the Ministry of Social Development that said that if you are a man, you are the breadwinner and you cannot receive it. So the fact that we look at fathers generally, single father or father on the whole, as a parent that is a substitute parent, a parent that is a fill-in-the-gap parent, a parent that is a secondary parent, that is why we see the challenges you end up in, or it heightens when you become a single parent, or single father, rather.
You know, I could imagine the kind of experiences you would have had. You know, can you recall a single moment or a case that moved you so deeply that it shifted something in you and left a lasting impact on how you see this work?
I've unpacked. I've seen many. I'll give you 2 that rocked me the most. The case of Mr. Selvon Reyes, who went to a magistrate, begged for custody. The magistrate looked at them and told them, look at you. You don't even look like you could take care of yourself. I will never give you those 2 children in your care for them to suffer. It was under 6 months, and the mother's boyfriend slit the throat of the 2 boys and the mother. Hardest one to deal with. And the one I would say that would have come in second to that was one that I dealt with very recently, within the last 2 years, of Mr. Anson Mohammed. Anson had an older son that he paid maintenance for religiously all the time. In his later life, he found out that he had kidney failure, heart failure. He was at that point when I got into contact with him. His cousin, who I actually know, she got in contact with me, and I went down to see him. And at that point in time, there was a maintenance warrant out, committal warrant to take him straight to prison. And this would have accrued only when he got sick. He maintained the child religiously. He cared for the child, maintained the child, and was given no access to his son for a number of years. And it had come to a position where he could not maintain him because he was knocking on his deathbed, so to speak. He was still standing up, but he was ill. And he was so worried in his final days that he could be taken to prison. And it's only when we intervened. He had gone before a court. When he went before the magistrate told him, you have 2 hands, you have 2 feet. You could go in somewhere and answer a phone. Anson at this point is on a disability grant. If he presumes to work, he will be taken off of the disability grant. He also has another dependent who is his younger daughter in his new marriage as well. The mother, after I highlighted the entire thing, then when she realized I was investigating, contacted me and confessed to me that the boy was already on social welfare because of his father's illness, unbeknownst to the father. So the father was facing being arrested for a warrant that the mother took out, even though she was already in receipt of social welfare for the child, public assistance. However, I must commend her. She did try, or she did help to get the order stopped. I think they went in, we had him go in, and then by the time I highlighted it, the next judge that sat on it heard what the last judge said, and they ended the maintenance order. However, you could end the maintenance order, but the warrant is still going to be there. You'll have to go high court to get quashed and all these kind of things. And while in the process of trying to do so, Anson passed away and died. So, but I am glad to say, though, the mother, I think the highlighting of this was so important because it impacted the mother. And she then allowed him in the last final year. He lived about a year after I did the video with him. She allowed him to see the son after so much years. Son went and spent time with him and his sister. They had some time together. And I think that, I'm pretty sure, would have been the highlight for Anson. And this is why I'm saying we're still looking for legislative reform as into when any parent who is on a maintenance order becomes so seriously ill that they are placed on a disability grant, that automatically the maintenance order should end and an application to the social welfare service should be made so that the child could get assistance that the child needs.
You know, it's something, I spoke to Gerard Gordon sometime, the president of the Prison Officers Association, and he shared some stories with me. One being an inmate who was incarcerated for his failure to pay his, what we call maintenance or child protection. He had lost his job. And the sad thing, once you're incarcerated, it does not stop. You still have to pay, even though you're incapable of paying because you may be incarcerated. And Gordon said he graduated because he came back in a second time for failure to pay his maintenance, his child support. And a few months after, he was brought in for robbery. And he is presently at the prison institution now for murder.
See, and one thing I want to add just to correct there, and that was something that we highlighted at the JSC, because it was only during my study of law I realized that it even existed. The practice of the system before was that men, while they were incarcerated, they allowed the maintenance to run and warrants to be taken out for them. Section 27 of the family law states clearly that once a man is incarcerated, automatically maintenance order must cease.
Okay.
I think they have corrected it now with the new court-based system, because with the court-based system, it's online and it could be identifiable. But you're very right. In years gone by, many men had maintenances accrue upon them while they were in prison. And when they came out, they were rearrested on warrants that actually were illegal warrants while they were incarcerated. If those men go before the court today, they could sue the state for being rearrested at that time, because the law is clear on that.
You know, Rhondall, I'm certain that this mission that you are on can be very arduous, holding space and standing in the gap for broken families, men, the justice system. It can certainly take a massive emotional and mental toll on you. Additionally, you're a father yourself. How have you personally coped with the weight of this mission over the years?
I will tell you, a lot of prayer, boy. I have a prayer room, you know, and I use that. Trust me, because sometimes, as I said, you feel like you're banging your head. Everybody sees it, you know. Everybody agrees with it. They're in the room with those who could make the changes. They know what you're saying is right. They see what you're saying is right. And something just doesn't move them to move. Whether it's what I'm saying doesn't sound politically correct at the time, what I am saying maybe appear controversial to some section of society, and there just isn't the will to commit to it. And that to me is the thing that frustrates me. And that to me, as I said, at times gone by, it did get stressful to the point where at times during a little before the COVID, anxiety and stress and these things are things that bombarded me until I started to even seek help for my mental health. I had to seek help for my mental health from other men to encourage and embolden, and not just encourage me, to help me manage with the stresses. Because when you're not seeing the stresses is when it's most dangerous. And because it wasn't stresses sometimes that pertained to my individual life, I would not see that the stresses were stressing me. So, because it impacts you when you see a case like Ansan Mohammed, and you feel like you cannot do anything, even though you know it is right. That is a stressful situation. It stresses you when you have a man like Selvon Real. So you have just like the young girls whose dad who came to me with her and his daughter said was cut off, I think last year or year before. You understand? Shannon Lalit. When he comes to me, what do I tell a man like that? His daughter had severed off the body by her stepfather. You understand? So I've learned, as I said, there are some things that I had to put before God, and I've seen the comfort of that. And there are many times that I myself go before older men my senior, men who've done what I have done, even though they haven't done it with the whole public fanfare. That could say, hey, Rhondall, take your time. Step back. I have my family also. Loved ones who would tell me, hey, take it down. You understand? Take it down. Take your time. Unwind. Because they see the signs. They know the moves from over the years of it as well. So I have a very strong support system family-wise. And I'm grateful to them. I'm grateful to God, and I'm grateful for the friends, our supportive sons and loved ones that I know always have my back. And that, without them, trust me, I would have stopped this a long, long time ago. My comrades in SFAT as well, also very, very, very supportive, very understanding that it's more of us, but most times you see me in the firing line. And sometimes I take the blows for everybody. So that is important.
I don't know if there exists anything like this, but do you see a need for a global coalition or network of organizations advocating for men and fathers, especially in the face of mental health challenges, suicide rates, and societal alienation?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of groups out there. There's a lot of groups out there. The Lone Fathers Association, Australia, Fathers for Justice. A lot of groups that we collaborate with. A lot of groups. I Stand is actually who we collaborated with to go to the United States Congress when you're dealing with international parental child abduction. So there's a lot of groups internationally that we've been exposed to. There's Davia as well. That's a male group as well that have got involved with us. We have locally the International Men's Day Conference as well that is now making a big move regionally. As I said, it started in Grenada. We had it in Trinidad last year. It's going to St. Kitts now. And to here, I mean, the Trinidadian version, we didn't get it the way we wanted because we didn't really get cabinet leaders sharing it. But the Grenadian version, the meeting today with the Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts, the way that they are so motivated by this move of empowering men throughout the region and they taking a hand-on experience in it is really what has given us courage to continue. Because yes, I think we're making massive dents in Trinidad, but I see that we have even greater dents across the region. The region appreciates the advocacy. They appreciate, the commitment, the fight, the drive, the consultations, the discussions that we have, the things that should it really leaves you with a good feeling. As I said, coming out of that meeting today and hearing prime ministers and talk about the value of what we're doing, even though we may not be hearing it from our local prime ministers, our local prime minister and members of government and opposition, it is still good to be regionally appreciated. We are loved in Grenada and because of the things we do. Loved in St. Kitts and Nevis because of the things we do. We loved in Trinidad too, eh? I must say the ground loves us. But to feel it from the top as well is really, really good. It makes you feel that you're really making change.
You know, Rhondall, as we wrap up this powerful conversation, I want to give you the space to speak freely, uncensored, and from the heart. Based on everything you've seen, lived, and fought for, what is one truth about fatherhood, manhood, or society that you believe needs to be heard loudly and unapologetically, even if the world still isn't ready to hear it?
I mean, fatherhood is important. Fatherhood is the pillar in the family. You'll never lose that, particularly a family that there are young boys in. Fatherhood is role modeling for young boys. Good fatherhood, that is. Good leadership, good mentorship. And I mean, no matter how they want to diminish it, they want to alter what the family looks like, they want to alter the rules or the perception of fatherhood and what fatherhood should be or what manhood should be. If a man shouldn't have, seems like they don't want men to have testosterone again. I want to keep encouraging men and boys. I want young boys to be excited about manhood, be excited about fatherhood, be excited about having the opportunity to be the best man that you can be. It is something good to be male. There is this, as I say, demonizing and vilifying of being male. And if you're male, you have to fix you to be a good man. So there's a sense of preaching to these boys. And I wasn't, very recently, the AG held a domestic violence seminar. And there was a sense of the young boys, I could feel them feeling attacked, feel them feeling like if they automatically will become these vicious monsters that will prey on everybody else in the family. And I want young boys to know that is a lie from the pit of hell. You have the opportunity to be the best version of a man that is out there. And I think young boys are excited about that. I think we need to keep them excited about that. I think we need to let men understand you're a good father, celebrate it and celebrate it loud. Fatherhood and manhood will always be a pivotal, important, and a pillar in this society and in every individual family.
Rhondall, let me thank you profusely. Thank you for your courage, your clarity, and your unwavering conviction. You didn't just give us answers today. You gave us perspective, truth, and a challenge to see beyond the surface. This conversation wasn't just about men or fathers. It was about healing, accountability, and restoring what's been broken at the foundation of our homes and societies.
True.
And if we truly want to reduce crime and restore families and rebuild nations, we must be willing to confront the uncomfortable truths and commit to rebuilding from the root. To every listener, this is the path of the audacious rebel, and as always, I leave you with this. Change will not come from top down. It begins with us, within us. So until next time, stay bold, stay aware, and above all, stay audacious. Audacious Rebel. Audacious Rebel.